Greetings, everyone. I'm here with Laura Nalbandian, and we are having a conversation today because we are both speakers at the upcoming JWG EA conference, the virtual online conference that will be October 3rd through the 6th. And we're gathering together with speakers to talk about, well, some of the topics that are going to be happening there, but more surrounding those subjects that we feel would be of great interest to you and excite you about what's coming up here in early October. So I'm so happy to join with you again, Laura. And we thought today that it would be nice to just have a conversation about Pluto backing into Capricorn until November 18th. Is that right?
I can look, but it's gonna be about
Go ahead and look. Okay, so September 1st, Pluto backs into Capricorn. And this is the last time it will be in Capricorn for 248 years. And so we've got about 2.5 months, and now we're almost to the middle of September, 2 months left of Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. We've all been living through Pluto and Capricorn for many years now, and we're all ready to say bye-bye, I think. What do you think about that?
Well, I being a Capricorn myself and a late degree Capricorn, I wish Pluto well on its journey into the next sign, and thank Pluto in Capricorn very much for what it has taught me, but I won't miss that.
Yeah, we both have some late Capricorn energy, Laura, you and I do. So yes, these outer planets, they really can bring us to that place in our evolution where we have no choice but to move through a door, right? There's no going back. There's no going sideways. Whatever we resist persists. And so when we were talking about and sharing, some interest about Pluto, because you were doing a talk on facing your shadow, Pluto transits, we chose you to talk about this because we know you would be masterful at it. And we wanted you to talk about this at the conference because we all go through Pluto transits at one point or another in our journey. We all do. Not everyone's going to have Pluto conjunct their sun or their Venus, or not everyone's going to have Pluto opposing their Mars, because it takes 248 years to go all the way around the zodiac. But we all have Pluto transits. We all experience this intense, immense energy in our life because at some point it's going to reach a personal planet inevitably. So really looking forward to you discussing this at the conference, Laura. But for all of us right now, until we get to early October, and to prepare us all better maybe for the next 2 months, and we're all collectively in the throes of a very big political time with this Pluto and Capricorn. We're all at the edge of our seat and feeling the immensity of the times in such a Capricorn fashion. Well, we don't want this to be a political discussion. We want to recognize that there is a lot of stress and pressure and tension. And we know that this is it's a seminal time to be alive, like a moment, a lifetime, or a period in our life when some major things are happening, and we're all part of it together. So we want to talk about this transit to help hopefully support you moving forward.
And just for the clarification, it's November 19th here on the West Coast at 12:30-ish p.m. That Pluto will make its last fare thee well to Capricorn and move into Aquarius.
Yeah, I mean, it goes from earth to air. So I don't know about you. Let me know if you remember what it felt like when Pluto and Capricorn shifted to Aquarius. I definitely felt this gravity become almost like a jittery energy because Uranus can speed up everything. It was palpable for me. What did you feel when it made those shifts back and forth?
I wasn't, I didn't feel it that way and rarely ever feel the ingresses that way. Maybe it's just because I have Mars in Taurus, Moon in Taurus. Maybe there's such a density sometimes. I mean, I have very sensitive energies at a personal level. What I feel in that Mars in Taurus and Moon in Taurus, from a tactile point of view and even an energetic point of view from people and situations, But in terms of planets transiting, ingressing, egressing from one sign to another, I rarely ever feel anything specific, except, I see it and go, well, I'm glad that's happening. I'm kind of done with where it's been. But I also have to remind myself that if we shame or blame the archetype we are leaving, we are bound to carry shadow with us into the next. So I want to be grateful for what Pluto and Capricorn has given us collectively, because no matter what sign Pluto is in, the shadow is going to show up. And as much as we want to believe that Pluto's ingress into, let me say it this way. When Pluto went into Capricorn, I thought, is this going to be the time that the patriarchy is brought down? Or is it going to be the time the patriarchy makes a concerted, intense stand to its fight to the death? Right. And so that, and so in that fight to the death, expand its power base, to have a resurgence, to have a, no, I'm not going, so I'm going to stick around. So I want to, pay attention to what the shadow shows us, because it is, as difficult as lessons are to learn, they are gifts for us to pay attention to. That's a hard pill to swallow when we're dealing with difficulty, but it is true for me nonetheless. Well, the key here is not to overly idealize the next archetype and want to slam the door shut on the previous archetype. And so we have an opportunity pretty much every time that Pluto's going to transit into its next sign. It's going to back up and give us a reminder, right? Have we cleaned up our mess personally, collectively? Have we paid attention to the shadow? And so it's giving us that opportunity not to drag as much baggage into the next. But if we go into denial, I'm so done with that. I never want to think about it, whether that's an issue in your life or a planetary archetype, and then overly idealize where you're going, that can be a problem. Because then reality, as Pluto will give us Plutonian reality, will at some point slap us about.
Yeah, for sure.
For that idealized, people are talking about the Aquarius age and, peace and love. And I'm like,
would be nice, but
it would be awesome. I am not adverse to that by any stretch, but we have things to learn. And so we have this opportunity, as you said, to sweep the deck, to clean the deck, to do something while this retrograde is going on until November 19th.
The final sweep. I mean, I think those words inspire me to do more, right? Because it's almost like you've moved out of a home you've been living in for a long time. And maybe that home is the place that you've lived within yourself. And you've cleared out all sorts of baggage, and it's just stuff you've collected. You have no use for it anymore. And you're just clearing out the place, right? Well, there's still left, there's dust still around. There's maybe a few boxes. You haven't totally cleared the place. And so it doesn't feel energetically like you want it to. So this final sweep is really about getting that broom in there and the shovel or whatever else is required, and any remnants of the past that are so still visible for you that you just need to grab a hold of and say, okay, dude, or okay, whatever it is, a mindset or relationship difficulty. I don't want to bring this into my future, and I'm not going to just kick it to the curb and pretend it doesn't exist. I really am. I need to confront this for good, because I'll tell you, one of the biggest motivators that works with clients of mine that have had problematic relationships with their parents, even as they get older, and their parents are in their 80s or 90s, and they still, every time they're with their parent, they feel like they're 10 again. still haven't really worked through those emotional dynamics. And
Right.
every time works like magic. Do you want those parents again? Hell no. Or what have you. No way do I. Then have the conversation, even if it doesn't compute in their consciousness. Your job is just to have the conversation, plant the seed, bid adieu, whatever it is, but you have to make that emotional effort. Without the emotional effort, it does come back inevitably.
Yeah, and sometimes that's not a safe space to do that work.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes, you know, you might have a parent who's got a personality disorder, narcissism, borderline.
That's not
They
safe.
might have bipolar. They might have something that, or they're in, you know, last stages of Alzheimer's or an illness. So you don't have that space. That doesn't mean that you can't do the work.
That's right.
Right? See, and here's my theory. My theory is if I'm dependent upon my parent hearing me and they are unable to, given circumstances, then I'm still locked into that power dynamic. I'm still caught in the karmic pattern and the karmic complex that's associated with that. So I believe I can do, and I have, do the work regardless of my parent being alive or not, or being in a space to hear it or not. I can do the work to let that go, whether that is through ceremony, through therapy, through DMP, deep memory processing, whatever it is that you can do to resolve that karma, because it's around the individual's attachments, right? It really has nothing, in my world, has nothing to do with the parent themselves, right? It's our response and reactions, our attachments and expectations. So it's breaking down those, right? So when we think about Capricorn and we think about old structures or structures of some kind, whether they're social constructs, societal constructs, parental constructs. We talk about conditioning of society and parents. We also talk about, I think of Saturn and Capricorn as karmic conditioning, the conditioning that comes over time, even if it's previous lifetime, the conditioning that happens. And so we have this opportunity to really stay present and do the work to release the attachments to the conditioning and those responses that come with it. And particularly if we're dealing with a parental dynamic, which is associated with Capricorn.
Very much.
Right? We're dealing with a parental dynamic. That inner child wants so much for the parent to do something to make it better. And I was listening to this fabulous podcast on narcissism the other day. And this woman, her first name is Romani, and she's from India or from Indian heritage. So pronouncing her last name is impossible. So I will not attempt to butcher it or even make it right. She talked about radical acceptance. And radical acceptance is the ability, and one doesn't have to have a narcissistic parent in order to do radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is being able to accept our partners, our parents, our siblings, our children, our situation for exactly who they are. That doesn't mean we stay invested in them, but we have a clear-eyed look, radically accepting this is who they are. They will never be different. I then have the power and the control to change my orientation to who they are versus who I expect them to be.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to share something that just came to me as you were talking, because, you know, my parents were born in the early 30s. So their conditioning was such a time where just the way that parents discipline their children were so different. My dad didn't even think twice about using the belt on all of us. And anyway, he did unfortunately get Alzheimer's too young, very young. And at this transition, oftentimes he was kind of this eccentric musician, church musician. And so this weird detachment, Uranian mixed with Capricorn combination. And when he got sick, and he did have a quick temper if you weren't doing what he wanted you to be doing. And when he started getting sick, he became very emotional. Like, I don't think I ever saw him cry my entire life. And all of a sudden he's sobbing like a baby all the time. It was a wild thing that was happening. But that's also this defrosting, or this, you know, bringing down the walls of Capricorn. There was so much inside. And my sister actually asked him, because she was very involved in his care, Dad, I have to ask you, like, why were you so hard on all of us? And he just started to sob. And his words were this is so Pluto and Capricorn at this time, thinking about it. You have no idea how much pressure I was under, and his job in the church and what they expected. So he would have all this pressure at his work, and then he would come home, and one trigger, it would come out on us. So that was his explanation. He wasn't
And he didn't
raised.
have the strategies to deal with the
No,
stress.
he didn't have, he was,
No one.
yeah. And I thought, that is actually something, one statement that has helped me. I mean, as it took a long time to forgive him for how he disciplined us. I could no sooner imagine doing that to my child than, fly to the moon. And yet that made sense to me. You don't have the tools, you don't have the conditioning, you don't have the experience. It would never make sense to me in a way that I would accept it so much, but I understood it from his lens. And so, and detachment, frankly, he was detached, and he was also, felt like it was his job to do that. That was his job as father. So, yeah, I mean, Pluto and Capricorn, what it will do is it's going, all these years, we have all these memories, we have this history within us. And if there's anything within you that hasn't been properly processed or worked through, this final sweep, I invite you in the next 2 months to just get in there and dig the emotional trenches, get the shovel, get the broom, and it doesn't mean that when Pluto enters Aquarius, that it will all be perfect or gone. We could be shocked right back into that story again. But really, there is a pressure now with Pluto retrograde to really return to the past and look at it and feel it and move it. And so that is what we want. We want us all to do, right? We want you to do this energy. Free yourself.
Exactly. And in my Pluto talk for the EA conference, the JWG EA conference, October 3rd through the 6th. I think I'm lecturing on the 4th on the Pluto transits about facing the shadow. I talk about burying the dead. And so I think the ritual of, if you take the metaphor of sweeping up the remains, whatever that is, thinking of it as remains, it's the dust, it's the detritus, it's the debris, and it might even be big chunks, it might even be big stuff. Nonetheless, you're sweeping it up and you have to do something with it. Now you could throw it in the garbage with malice and tinged with regret and guilt, or we can bury the dead with honor. And that's a hard thing to do when something hasn't been peaceful, happy, or felt good in any way. But nonetheless, being able to find the grace in there and to bury the dead respectfully, to say, you served me. This was here for a reason. I now am done with. I now understand, and I'm ready to move on. And I'm ready to bury this here. And to do so, again, respectfully. Because otherwise, it'll be the zombie rising out of the grave to come follow you.
Yeah. We're all responsible for what we create, is what you're also saying, is that, respectfully is what you're saying. It's like such a Capricorn word, and we're all responsible for what we create. We choose our family, we choose our upbringing for our own evolutionary purposes.
Necessity.
Evolutionary necessity, exactly.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we were talking about, Laura, before we pushed record was that Mars is going to be opposing Pluto 3 times between early November and April for all of us. And we talk about Pluto as a lower octave, Mars is a lower octave of Pluto as a lead point in our evolution. It's a desire nature of the soul. And so your desire might be to resolve something, to bury the dead, as you say, to put something to rest peacefully, respectfully. Wow, that's a powerful intention. I want to put this to rest. peacefully and respectfully, even if it's a mindset that you have that's been holding you back, right? It doesn't have to be a person. It can be how you've beaten yourself up for something or held yourself back. Like, how long do you want to hold on to that? God
Yes.
knows that, God does not want you to be doing that, and so don't punish yourself, like allow yourself to just lay it to rest. And so that is also an opportunity to really clean house.
Yeah.
Nothing feels better than cleaning the house and having everything
Clean
energy clear. Clean your house,
Yeah.
your inner house now.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, go ahead.
and I think that a great ritual that I will talk about in the lecture again is how you can ritualize that laying something to rest, how you can ritualize sweeping things clean. I mean, just use your imagination for one, but I like the thought of, if it's a pattern, let's say it's a pattern of beating oneself up, to take any representations of that or create representations of it, or to write yourself a letter or to write it out, what it represented, and then to literally bury it somewhere, right? Even to tear it up and put it under a plant and continue to water the plant and allow the paper to decay inside the plant. There's so many different ways that you can ritualize the process. It also somaticizes it. It puts it into the body. There's an active experience of doing something with it. And I do like that experience. And then talking about, or thinking and talking about those Mars oppositions, one of them being November 3rd. And we cannot avoid the fact that the election will be on I think it's the 5th. So I think that Tuesday is the 5th. We can't avoid linking it to that, but it's not only that. But there is, when I think of Mars, the desire function, the will function, to the ability to exercise your will and your personal desires, right? And yes, certainly as the leading element of the soul's evolutionary work in incarnation of desire, right? But when we are either unconsciously thwarting our own desires, setting up roadblocks, or we experience some external manifestation of our desires not being met, one primary manifestation of that is anger. It's a sense of impotence. It's a sense of helplessness. I cannot direct my will, or it's not going the way I want it to. So I'm not saying who will win the election, because I don't know. But one way or the other, one side's not going to be happy, because one side's going to win and one side's going to not. And so there's going to be in my guesstimation, astrological guesstimation, I can imagine a significant number of people in this country come the end of the election or soon thereafter, as we get numbers coming in, are not going to be happy that their will was thwarted, that they felt helpless in the face of something, that what they wanted did not happen.
Totally. Yeah. And so Pluto is going to be opposing Mars. Pluto in Capricorn, which is patriarchy. Mars in Cancer is matriarchy, man and woman in opposition. And what do we want? We want balance. We want to find balance. And yet it's like the wild, wild west. They're holding on to their holsters. That's what it feels like. Pluto is opposing Mars. Who is going to draw their, pistol faster? For lack of a better analogy,
Yeah.
this anti-gun thing, I'm all over. But
that's a weapon. So I gotcha.
yeah. So, but I love the visual, because that's what it is. It's a standoff and an opposition. Think about, I love this teaching in evolutionary astrology. It's one of my favorite, because people want to fear the opposition.
Yep.
That's what we naturally do. Capricorn's all about our fears and our resistance. What if, and what a fear of the unknown, or what will happen if. And the opposition Jeff Green teaches is that it gives you an opportunity to throw off something from the past. And the only way to really do it is to totally confront it, to face your shadow, like you're going to speak about, Laura, and to really go toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder, like not unflinching in your approach. That is Mars. It's instinctual. It is courageous. you know, it's confident, it's instinctual more than anything. We need that instinct because before the mind comes in and says, oh my gosh, I'm afraid. So it is going to be a time, and while we'll all be very heated, I'm sure, at that time and on the edges of our seats,
Yes.
it's also a time for you to reflect about your own personal evolution. What's triggering you? The trigger tells you where you are not free.
It's true. Absolutely.
And so what is it that's triggering? And for a lot of us who don't have control over what happens, I don't want someone making choices for me that aren't in alignment with my values, for example. So if we, and that will make me crazy. I have a daughter. I want her to have that freedom. And so, you know, nothing makes me more crazy than not having control over things that aren't in alignment with my values. And so, of course, it's going to be a collective thing we experience, a personal thing we experience. You know, I want people to vote for those values, whatever they are. These are just mine. Somebody else might have another opinion about it. That's perfectly fine. But you're right, Laura. There's like this 50-50 feeling of 50%, at least of this country and the whole world will be watching. I have to talk about the pink elephant in the room. I'm sorry, I do. But 50% of the country is going to be really, really pretty angry.
Yes.
Right? We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know what's going to happen. And if we think one of the beautiful elements of aspects in evolutionary astrology is that we use phases, right? Like the phases of the moon. And so that Mars is going to be approaching the opposition. It'll be gibbous. There's a lot of anxiousness building up to that. Anxiety. Could I, you know, all the projected regrets, all the projected Virgo archetypes, right? Did we do enough? Will it be enough? Am I enough? Is this going to be enough? On either side, it is a one size fits all on either side. Coming from your perspective, that kind of anxiety. Full phase kicks in after the opposition, and that is pointing the finger at other people. It's their fault.
Yeah.
I have no power because somebody else took it away from me. And it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you are on. That's going to be, again, something that either side could feel.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, we're all living on the planet at this time, and to live with such opposition and polarizing energy, if you're a sensitive soul, it's uncomfortable. And we just live in the world in a different way. I mean, I go on hikes and pass by houses at times on my way to the trails with people who've got whatever in their signs in their front yard that are different than signs that I would post on mine. I don't put any signs in my front yard. I don't want to be targeted. So you know what I mean? But my point is, it could be your next door neighbor. And if there's this kind of polarizing energy, we tend to not feel as safe as we would like to be. We all want to like our neighbors. We all want to feel safe. We all want to come together in community and in harmony. And yet with this Pluto at the last degree of Capricorn, a cardinal archetype, squaring the archetype of Mars, squaring Libra on the other side, opposing Cancer, it's in maximum stress at the anaretic degree. It just is. And so what can we do personally for our own evolution to push us over the hump? What can we do psychologically? What can we do emotionally? What can we do in the world that makes us feel like we are moving the needle in a better direction? I mean, we need to make an effort. That
Not
is
live in fear.
Yeah, not live in fear. That's where we start.
That is a hard ask because
it is a hard ask.
Fear, we are fear-based animals, right? That is a basic hard wiring. But we have a processor and we have ability to process emotion in ways that other animals may not. Yeah. I can't say they don't because I don't know, but we may have more of that facility than others. And so we have the ability to deal with our fears. We have an ability to face them and not let them rule us. And so Pluto at that anaretic degree, that 29th degree, is the crisis point of Capricorn, it's like,
Yeah.
I've always said about the 29th degree, you've had 30 degrees to do your homework. And you put it off, you've done some, you put it off, and in between there are some Pluto hits, and you're like, oh, I better get some of this done. And then you're like, I can do it later. And now we're at the 29th degree, and you've got time span. So it's like this crisis point. It can feel too much. It can feel like I can't do it, but there's mastery potential in this 29th degree. Every 29th degree has the potential of mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And so
more about that. I want to hear more about that.
Well, it's the we're at the tipping point. We're at the final tipping point. We're either going to tip back on our personal patterns, default back to the past because we feel that's safe, even though it's not comfortable and it makes us unhappy. It's safe. So I'll choose safe over projected fears of unsafety. So the mastery is to be able to say, all right, I'm willing to face this. I'm willing to acknowledge my fear, to stand in my fear and let that be and find some grace for myself and grace for my fears and not let them rule me. There is a child inside of us all. That child is quaking in its boots most of the time and is afraid. And we, as the adult part of ourselves, need to grab that child's hand and tell them, I got this. We've got this. It's okay. It's okay to be afraid. We're not going to pretend we're not, but it's okay to be afraid. We're just not going to let it rule us. It's not going to stop us from moving forward. And look, from a political spectrum, I'm just going to say it. I'm on the left. I'm a progressive. I'm a liberal. That's just who I am. Right. And if the conservative side wins, then I'm going to have to deal with and face things within myself that are mine to deal with and to not blame others for it, though I will mightily want to.
Yeah.
Right. And so, the mastery is at this point mastering the archetype that's at 29 degrees. That's the key. Every 29th degree of all the 12 archetypes has a mastery point at 29 degrees, and it's to do the mastery of that archetype. So it is the mastery of Capricorn, which is the having personal authority, the ability to author your own reality, not be defined by the political narrative. Yes, we'll have to live within it if it's not going to go the way that I would personally want it. I'll have to live within it, but it won't define me. And I'm going to work really hard not to live in fear from it. Right? So accountability, how am I accountable for what I'm creating in my life and how I'm co-creating with the rest of humanity? Right? How do I not default into helplessness of futility of the Capricorn archetype? How do I stand up in confidence and mastery in my own world? Right? Life doesn't mean you're always going to get what you want. We don't. And that's the reality of Capricorn.
Capricorn's also about regret, so what if you don't take those steps, if you don't make the effort, you can summit through that 29th degree, or you can slide all the way back down the mountain.
Absolutely.
And if you don't take that step and you slide, there will be regret, because everything happens at a certain time in our life. We don't always have the chance to do something again. Moments arrive for a reason. And so knowing that you've reached that moment where you can say something, do something, even if you're scared. And we've learned through the teachings of EA that our ultimate strength lies in our ability to be vulnerable. When my dad became that child and was remorseful and emotional, it opened his soul up to have a conversation with my sister that helped her try and understand the things that caused her pain. It took him becoming a child, it took him becoming totally vulnerable, so in this humble state that everything had to collapse. All the Capricorn came down. And it's a beautiful thing when we can open ourselves up, when we can expose that underbelly, that tenderness that we all ultimately have in common. It's just it's the only way in. It's the only way up, and it's the only way through the water.
Right. There is one other option on that hill, that mountain, and that is to go paralyzed and to just stay stuck right in that one point. I can't go forward, I can't go back. But you know, there's the next step, man. That is the key here is taking that next step. Right. It doesn't have to, you don't have to make one fell swoop to the summit. You just got to take the next step.
Yeah, exactly. I remember watching this mountain climbing, Alex Honnold, who climbed the face, and climbs the faces of these mountains, master mountain climber. And in order to climb the face of, now I'm blanking of the name of this
El
mountain.
Capitan, he did.
Yeah. He had to go up and he had to go down a little bit at one point, and to go back up. It had to do with these grooves, you know, in the side of the mountain. He couldn't just keep going up. Sometimes, like in a cardinal fashion, it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process. To climb the mountain, sometimes we do have to go back in order to find our way up again. It's just the way it is with this archetype.
Absolutely.
And it's a good reminder that going back doesn't mean we're losing our footing, or actually going back can save us time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can save us time.
It can be the safest route.
Ah, there you go. Whoa. Okay, so I just thought of something, because all these family members keep coming back with this Capricorn, but I have 2 older brothers, and I remember I had not ever jumped off the diving board in our backyard. And I remember walking to the edge of this diving board and knowing I had an option. I could jump in, I could have the courage to jump in, or I could just walk back the diving board. And of course, what did one of my brothers do? Runs to the back of the diving board. So I have now no option. I have to jump. And so that's what it feels like, honestly, with Pluto and Capricorn. Someone is not going to let you walk back off the diving board. You're going to have to jump, in the polarity as Mars in Cancer. You're going to have to face your fear and get into the water.
That also sounded like the Mars Pluto opposition for sure.
Yes, and it was.
Yeah.
And aren't these memories, these emotional memories? Anytime we have an emotion in our past, we tend to never forget it, because it makes a difference. We can forget things in our mind all the time, but the things that have affected us emotionally, especially now this fall for us, we will return to an age that, you know, we could be 7, we could be 2. This can trigger the oldest stuff ever.
And it can feel threatening. There's your brother standing at the back of the diving board. There's you. You know, I'm a first house Pluto. I would have just started running toward him and tackled him off. That's me.
Way bigger than me. I was.
I don't care. I would have done it. I'd have gone for his shins. I as a child, I took on the bigger kids, even the boys. I was never going to back down, but that's probably wasn't always the best route. But I'm thinking of this Pluto Mars and Mars Pluto opposition, and particularly thinking of the next one after the November, because it's January 2nd. Ooh. And in 4 short days is the certification of the election.
Might be a relive. We should remember too, Mars will be retrograde as of December 6th. Is it the 6th? And in Leo, it will be retrograde. So remember, with Mars retrograde, it can have the effect of, it inverts the energy. Mars wants total freedom to move out into the world and ride like the wind and be unlimited in its pursuits of what it wants. When Mars inverts, it points inside of us and it heats us up from the inside, which can create anger and inflame our emotions. So in all of us, right? So yes, January 2nd, Mars will be retrograde in Leo and opposing Pluto in the early degrees, a degree of Aquarius, excuse me. And Pluto will be direct, but Mars will be retrograde. And it will be a relive from 4 years prior. On the themes will be similar. How it all plays out, we don't know. And
we don't. And you know, as I said, regardless of how this goes, there's going to be people pissed off. It won't matter, right? So I am not in the particular prediction game of what I think the exact events will be, but we can predict the energy. I mean, that's what astrology is about for me, is predicting that particular energies that are at play, and then thinking and using our imagination based on history or based on our own personal history. You know, will past be prologue, or will we do something different?
So that Mars then will come back after it moves direct. The end of February will move direct around the 25th, 26th, and will oppose Pluto one more time, April 26th. So now we have early November, early January, and the end of April. It's important to plot these dates and points, you know, on your journey, and to observe yourself through this period in time. What are the choices that you are making? Are they leading you forward, or are they holding you back? Are your choices reflecting what you want long-term, or are they reflecting your fear in the moment? Right. So this is an opportunity to break free from your past. If you are tired of the same old story, if you want to experience your life in a new way, change careers, leave a relationship, move into a new one, whatever it might be, change locations. I mean, it's all about change, moving forward, changing your history, changing your history. There are parts of all of our history that we would love to change. We can't rewrite them so much. They've happened. They've made us who we are. But we can now change the next chapter, and we're in charge of that. So Pluto Mars opposition will bring us all to the edges of ourselves, to the end of the diving board. It will bring us to the end of the diving board.
I mean, it can feel like we have no choice, but we do. We may not have a choice not to jump into the pool, right? We may not have that choice, but we have a choice about our story. We have a choice about our orientation, what we take from it. Do you take from the fact that you take the story, you take from it that you were a victim? Not you, but if that's the, you know, the story, the scenario is the story that comes from it victimhood? I didn't have any choice? Or is it, in that moment, I took the stand and decided to be courageous? And I made that leap. I made that jump.
Yeah, the values in the effort.
Yep. So I love the word agency for an Mars Aries archetype. And, you know, having that where we don't feel, with that Pluto opposing Mars, where we feel like we may have agency in something. That's the will. That is the directing our desire and our will, and not having agency doesn't feel good. Again, it feels helpless. It feels disempowered. And so even in the face of external circumstances that by rights we could make the story that we were helpless and victimized, that we didn't have agency, we need to find the place in it where we can establish agency, where we can establish our independence, where we can establish our will, not over others, but within self.
Yeah, how will we respond as well to our circumstances? The response is that Mars energy versus reaction. So we have an opportunity to respond in a way that supports our evolution. Because when we react, we're reacting from fear. When we respond, we're reacting from grace, from a place of centeredness and calm and peace and acceptance, radical acceptance. For some, if they're going through something that in the very last thing they want to be going through, and on a personal level, when we hear about all sorts of things, Laura, in the work that we do, when people get diagnoses that scare them, or, you know, get news about something that will change their life, lose their job unexpectedly, it was how we respond to the events that are happening in our life, that we would never choose. But here we go again. We're all responsible for the reality we create. And so it's a crossroads energy and an opportunity to evolve, for sure.
in the final analysis of this is, how do we find our empowerment? How do we find, even if it's just a teeny little piece, right? I don't care how small or how grand it is. Don't make it have to be something big, but if you can get a toehold into that empowerment, hallelujah.
Yeah, what would empower you? I'm putting you on the spot under this transit. Let's give an example.
I have some things that are revisiting, certainly, as Pluto's not going to hit my sun, but it's
Rub
like,
up against
it's
it,
like
maybe.
a wave that instead of, crashing up over, it pushes me off balance a little bit, right? So it's kissing me, and I'm getting a Pluto kiss.
Poking. I think poking more like, right?
It's trying to be kind, and not provoke Pluto anymore than I need to. So acceptance is not accepting my fate in a negative way. Acceptance is not, oh, this is my lot, this is the way this is, that's the way it's going to be. That's the Capricorn kind of futility.
Yeah.
But there is, okay, this is the way it is, how do I choose to be in it? Right? If my behavior patterns I'm confronting have led me into relationship styles or work patterns or whatever they are, okay, the pattern is out there. People are engaging with me, if that's the deal, in the way that I've taught them. Now I want to be different in it, right? So to empower myself is to take I just think these incremental steps. All right, but just not doing the old pattern and watching to see how other people react. When I recognize the pattern and do something different, I see people reacting and getting angry. My deal is not to get angry back at them, because all they know is how I taught them to treat me, right? And now I'm changing the game, right? So if I just stop doing some of that behavior, let them have their moment, let them work through it, have some grace for that. Now, if they're being abusive because I've done something different, that is a whole nother scenario. But if they get angry, why are you behaving that way? Why are you blah, 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 blah? And it's like, I would say, well, I've recognized there's a pattern I've been playing, and it's really been unhealthy for me. And I'm trying to rectify that. I'm trying to behave in a more authentic and a more healthy way within myself.
Wow, that's like putting it to bed, putting it to rest, laying the old pattern to rest. Same thing within you, like the emotional pattern, how you might have, I mean, it's a fight or flight response, is it not? Come on, like we all want, if something's coming at us, you want to, it's a fight or flight response. It's a natural response. But as we evolve as souls, it creates that, there's more calm, there's more, the responsiveness comes from the centeredness. And then that's empowering.
Yeah.
To observe yourself in that change, or to feel yourself in that wave of change. Like there's nothing more empowering than feeling yourself in the middle of a situation where you would have reacted way different a year ago, even 2 years ago.
It's true. And the thing is that, again, I have to take responsibility for how I engaged with the people in my life and taught them who I am, who I was at that time, and how exhausted I am by that behavior.
It is exhausting.
It is. And I can't change them. That radical acceptance is they are who they are, right? And trying to change them, to get them to see what needs to happen for me, is just giving my power away. So how do I empower myself? By making little changes, by making this, by staking my claim to this new way within myself, empowering myself to show up that way. And having the grace to, again, let the people around me adjust to this new experience. And they will have a choice. Do I want to be with this new version of Laura? Or do I not? That's up to them.
That's awesome. I love that. I think of Pluto in terms of empowering us in the ways that it has empowered me. I had a near-death experience, like, I don't know, 7 or so years ago when I was driving on a mountain pass, and this trucker was falling asleep and next to me, and there's a guardrail, and if he would have hit me, I would have been like, timber. Anyway, just I'm honking, and there's the wind from the past. And thank God it was the middle of the day. I was riding that guardrail. My heart is on the hood. And it took a while, and I made it through, but it was harrowing, scary, and my heart is racing. And I'm on the 5 freeway headed back home and shaking. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, that might have been it. You know, and I've said this before when I've referred to certain stages in time, is, have I done enough? What have I done? You know, and at that time I was looking back in my life, and I have these beautiful children, of course, which it's just been an honor to be their mother. And I thought about them, of course, but the things that really came to me in that moment, in terms of, some people might think, what have I accomplished? I didn't think about any of that. The only thing I thought about was that of all the things that required the most emotional courage in my life, and those were the things that I thought of, I was the most proud of, facing that fear, Laura, that you talk about. The emotional courage that it takes to face a fear will empower you to then face the next fear. And there were many, and there were big ones, but there were more. There have been, since that moment, I have had to face more of them. But that moment, that moment where I thought it was over, in the light of day, on a simple drive from A to B. And so I was reminded that it is not about what we do out there that empowers us. It's what we do in here. And boy, been tackling some of those, and you know, we're never done. Of course, there's more fears to face.
We're never done. It's all right. And it's and look, if you're pointing out there, you're pointing in the wrong direction. Right? If we're doing the shame and blame game because we're deflecting our own shame and blame, then we need to look at ourselves. And again, this is cleansing, sweeping out these stories, sweeping out these attachments. And some of them truly are karmic, right? Some of this is deeply embedded, and it doesn't mean that you can't do the work, right? It is a life effort. It's a life work. And I can do nothing but encourage my clients and the rest of you who will listen to this to continue to do the work. It is of great reward to do the work. And it is not easy, but it is deeply rewarding.
I mean, it really will free you up inside yourself, right? As you talk about this, the reward that you get after the fact, and then you just grow wings in the middle of it. So the next time something comes along, you're more evolved, and you're more aware, and you're more courageous. And that is a beautiful thing. Like I said, to experience yourself in the middle of a situation that might have triggered you at one point. Remember, the triggers tell us where we are not free. And now you're like, I'm not that triggered. I'm okay. If and the thing is, like you said earlier, to not attach to outcomes, to the truth of, only to the truth of what's best in the situation, which is the truth, and which is your evolving nature. How they respond to that is not your problem anymore. You're not attached. I mean, I am feeling so good to be up here now and not to be here and reacting again. So this is an opportunity for all of us, Laura. This lecture, I'm looking so forward to hearing of yours, to face our fears, because it is facing our fears that empowers us ultimately. Pluto is a planet of empowerment.
Without question. Without question.
All right, so I'm going to just want to share the screen, the conference coming up. We have so many fantastic speakers and topics. Honestly, like this lineup is a blown line for me. The topics, some topics I have never heard in all my years of astrology. And I'm going here to the page that shows we've got David Green kicking it off. Why we choose our family from an evolutionary point of view. I mean, okay, it's fine to tell you, hey, Laura, you chose your family. Did you know that? For your evolutionary purposes. But why? Dave is going to tell you why and how to see that in your chart. Of course, she was born into the family, a very powerful family, the founder of this work. Planet sign house synthesis with Bradley. just merging all those archetypes can be tricky. He's going to teach you more simple step-by-step ways to do that. Steve Wolfson's going to talk about involution before evolution, what has to happen before we can evolve. And Simon Forrester, embracing change through Uranus transits. There you are, my friend. Pluto transits facing our shadow with Laura Nalbandian. Super excited about Timothy Halloran. 12th house is so confusing. And he's going to talk about sacrifice. And for those of you who have a lot of 12th house planets, Pisces planets, you know that at times you may feel like you're sacrificing yourself for the other or for a cause. And this is going to be a fantastic talk. Looking forward to that. He's a new speaker to our group and been doing EA a long time. Cassandra by Jordan Smith, and very popular. Well, it's been popular for a long time with a lot of women who have felt silenced in situations and relationships. She's going to help talk to you about and teach about the courage to recover your voice and to speak up, where to see that in the chart. Jason Hawley, astrology, evolutionary astrology and sexual healing. Powerful, amazing lecture there too. I'm going to talk about evolving your soul's desire through Mars. We do have South Node of Mars in our chart, which are the desires that we've had in other lives, leading us to this life, and how we evolve those desires moving into the future with our North Node of Mars, how that's reflected in the evolution of your soul. We have, of course, Ari Moshe talking about Venus and tending to the inner garden. Health crises as an evolutionary catalyst with Bess Strzelecki, a new topic in our group. And who doesn't know this for themselves? You know, you get sick and you wonder why, and you're like, what emotion have I been repressing? Well, it's manifesting in a physical way. And that's how she found EA. She was really sick. She's going to talk about that and her path to healing. We have Karma Yoga and Your Right Work with Rav Shahal. Super wonderful talk there about Karma Yoga and mapping your soul's intention for evolution. The secondary progress chart with Rose Marcus. Also another level and layer to interpretation that can really help you. And it's really fun to look at your progress chart in that way, because we're not static beings. We're all evolving. And oh, wow. Kim Marie is going to talk about this election. Prepare us. When this started, you know, Biden was running against Trump, and now it's Kamala Harris. So a whole new set of charts. She's been preparing for this. And 1 month before this election, I'm so interested to hear what she's going to share and have to say. Unveiling the Psyche, also with Patricia Walsh, to close this conference, Soul's Journey through Evolutionary Astrology, looking at karma and the trauma signatures in the birth chart. So anyway, action-packed, all these EA topics, and so all with such depth and intention to help us evolve. And thank you, Laura, for joining us again. You're so part of the beginnings of this work. You're the soul that was with Jeff Green at the bookstore with your mama at the very beginning. You have roots, girl. And so we're so happy that you're a part of this. As always, so much history there that you bring to this space. So thank you for being a part of it again.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Always a blessing, always a pleasure. I'm ever so grateful.
So those of you who are interested in joining us, jwgaea.org to sign up or to look at the lectures again. You can use Laura 10 for a discount of 10% or Kristin 10 for a 10% discount as well. And we look forward to seeing you in our community, joining us too with a panel that kicks it off. A free panel actually for anyone who wants to check it out before the conference. And well, stay tuned for the topics that are going to be discussed there. All right, until next time, namaste.